Welcome to today's Global Connections program. I'm Bill Miller. What is the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, commonly called CEDAW? What are various cities around the United States and around the world doing to help implement this very important convention? We'll be back in just a moment to talk about these and other important issues. Welcome back to our program. Today we're taking a look at a United Nations convention, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, commonly called CEDAW. You're watching Global Connections Television, which is an independently produced program. The opinions expressed on Global Connections are solely those of the moderator and his guest. If our viewers would like to comment on previous programs or this program or recommend future programs and speakers, please go to the website at www.globalconnectionstelevision.com. Again, welcome to our program, and we're going to be talking about CEDAW. My guests today are experts on this very interesting convention. My guests today are Teena Halbig. Ms. Halbig, an entrepreneur and businesswoman, is the president of the Kentucky Division of the United Nations Association of the USA. Ms. Halbig is past president of the Kentucky League of Women Voters. My second guest is Reverend Mary Sue Barnett. Reverend Barnett is the director of the Women's Center at the Presbyterian Theological Center in Louisville, Kentucky, USA. Also, she is the co-founder and president of the Louisville CEDAW Coalition. Teena Halbig, Reverend Barnett, welcome to today's Global Connections program.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being with me today. Teena, let's jump right into it. The Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, and we'll just use the acronym from here on out.
Right.
That's a mouthful. What is CEDAW? It was adopted, I think, in 1979 by the United Nations. What is the basic purpose behind it?
Well, CEDAW is to help, it's a more comprehensive treaty. It's a more comprehensive look. It's not just piecemeal, and has to do with the civil, cultural, social, just the economic, all of the parameters that involve women. And it's important not only for women, but for families as well.
Exactly. So we're going to get into it. We're talking about basically economic rights, discrimination against women, human rights, just all the way across the board, everything. Now, roughly, these conventions that are adopted by the United Nations are put out to the various countries. They're not forced on countries. Countries have a right to adopt them or not. Roughly, how many countries have adopted this CEDAW convention, and how many have not?
Well, it's really amazing and shocking, but South Sudan recently ratified CEDAW in September of 2014, and so now there are 188 countries that have signed on to CEDAW. Unfortunately, the United States of America is not one of those. Along with there's other Sudan and Iran and a couple of Pacific islands, so there are a few that have not. But in this day and age, with the United States not signing on, we have undertaken initiative to work locally and to help with a new initiative called Cities for CEDAW that was born out of the 2014 March United Nations Commission on the Status of Women.
And these conventions, as I mentioned, are very, very important. And of course, this convention's been languishing before the U.S. Senate since 1979, basically. So maybe there'll be some movement in the not too distant future. Reverend Barnett, so often we hear about CEDAW being an international bill of rights for women. Do you view it that way? Can it be viewed as an international bill of rights for women?
Yeah, to echo what Teena said, it's comprehensive. I mean, it calls for advancement for girls' and women's human rights in every area of life. In the treaty, there's also a definition of what gender discrimination is. So there's a universal norm set out in the treaty, and no one can say they don't know what gender discrimination is. So it is a powerful instrument to advance rights for girls and women globally. And it's something that women across the world can connect with. It is a focus of solidarity and a catalyst for human rights.
Now, so often you'll hear, and these, as I mentioned, I'm a firm believer in these conventions because they strengthen existing laws, and in some countries where these rights are not respected or laws don't exist, they help push people in that direction. But so often you hear people say, well, we have our Constitution, we have our Bill of Rights, we have laws at the federal level, state level, local level. Do we really need an international convention? How do you respond to that?
Well, being in conversation with the women around the country who are part of the Cities for CEDAW movement, it's said that CEDAW is sort of the umbrella component, okay? And so it pulls together all of the other efforts like VAWA, IVAWA, you know, that are about advancing human rights for girls and women. So I think the key thing about CEDAW is that it says that there are human rights against girls and women because they are girls and women, okay? And so that's what's, I think, central about CEDAW.
Exactly. And Teena, so often we hear about systemic discrimination against women, and this can apply, it varies from country to country, but there is some type of systemic discrimination against women, be it in the United States with a glass ceiling and that type of thing. How do you view that?
Well, I think that's definitely true, and whether it's political, I mean, you can just look at, you know, general assemblies and count how many women are senators or representatives, or you can look in, you know, locally, whether it's magistrates or council people, just to look, and you will see predominantly a male-oriented legislatures in those places.
Exactly, yeah. And that, like I say, some countries it's worse than others. You have some countries.
Yes, and actually in some countries it's better. I mean,
well, true.
Women now are serving more and getting higher offices in other countries than in the United States of America.
That's true, yeah. You look at countries like, I think, Liberia, Rwanda, and some of the others.
Yes.
You have a much higher percentage of women members of parliament and in higher governmental decision-making positions as opposed to the United States and many other countries too.
Exactly. But it's important to have women in those positions because they can help with health care, with you know, discrimination in different forms. They can help in many ways. I mean, we see that happening all over, and that's part of what this is a lot of the things are piecemeal, where they happen here or there, they happen in one state and not another state. But, you know, with CEDAW, hopefully you would see this groundswell all over. And now is really when the momentum is out there to have this movement, to have other cities get engaged and to pass resolutions and proclamations and do ordinances to help make Congress, make your U.S. senators realize that it's important, because it's only made it to the Foreign Relations Committee and the full Senate has never voted on it. And that is what we need, the senators to vote for it.
And this has been traditionally the case, especially with the United States Senate. There has been so much misinformation and disinformation about these UN treaties. I think back just not long ago, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. This was a UN treaty that was brought together. The countries all came together on this. Most of the information, most of the treaty was written based upon the Americans with Disabilities Act adopted by the United States back in the 90s. I guess it was 94 or something. Well, I may be off on that date. But when it came time to vote on it, you had prominent Republicans like Senator John McCain, former Senator Bob Dole, who were strong proponents of it, and who went on the floor to promote it, and at that time it looked like it was going to pass. And when Senator Dole left the floor, the tide turned and they voted against it. because people like former Senator Rick Santorum was putting out misinformation about how it was going to destroy the charter school system in the United States, which was totally wrong, absolutely incorrect. But the United States Senate really should try to learn more about these conventions. The Convention on the Rights of the Child is still languishing there. You've got other conventions, other treaties that would strengthen the United States, because we're already doing most of this, if not all of it. So it would help us and help people around the world raise their standards. So
Yes.
the United States Senate should really maybe think about focusing and trying to get more correct information as opposed to what they've done in the past.
Right, and we do have some myths and facts, and that kind of information can be disseminated, and it also can be obtained. Most everybody uses the internet now, and they can look and find the answers, and not just take somebody's word or misconstrue. It's best to have the actual information.
Exactly right. Very true. And of course, we need information. We have to have it to make solid decisions. Well, the United Nations has put together Sustainable Development Goals that'll be implemented January 1st, 2016, I guess it is. And goal number 5 is to empower women. Or, Reverend Barnett, how does that tie? I mean, there must be a direct link between what we're talking about today with CEDAW and empowering women.
Yes, exactly. I think CEDAW, I see it as a transformational living document. It was adopted in '79, and it is still very relevant. And it is an instrument to truly advance that goal. It really is something that on the local level, cities can internalize to raise their consciousness about the fact that abuses against girls and women happen right in our own cities, among us, and it's actually rampant in a lot of ways. So to use that convention and to try to implement its principles locally is putting into action that developmental goal that you speak of.
Now, speaking of local, let's bring it down to the local level. That brings to mind the Cities for CEDAW program. You have been very involved in the Cities for CEDAW program. What exactly is that?
Well, it's a movement that was inaugurated almost a year ago at the Commission on the Status of Women in New York City. And the aim is for municipalities to pass resolutions and ordinances to implement this global treaty on a local level. So it's a global to local dynamic. We can't wait around for the federal government to do this. We've waited long enough. So our girls and women in the cities of this country can benefit. We can raise the bar on their daily lives. We can increase the level of hope and potential for girls and women's daily lives in many areas of their lives.
And as I understand it, in Louisville, you're from Louisville, the largest city in Kentucky, and you've had a variety of meetings. The local council voted on this, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But Teena, who are some of the groups that were involved in promoting this Cities for CEDAW concept?
Well, as state president of the United Nations Association of the United States of America, UNA, USA, Kentucky,
Right.
I'm very happy to say that we are a coalition member, and we have groups like that are wanting to join, also American Association of University Women, the League of Women Voters, the universities, different organizations at the universities. It's just amazing the number of organizations that want to be involved in moving this forward. It's really important because it will involve looking at and evaluating women and people that are working in government and what their salaries are. And I mean, it can have an economic impact. And that money makes economic sense for women and children and families and men as well. If they have more income to house and shelter their families and get a better education, those kinds of things are extremely important.
Exactly. And it's getting more and more expensive to have a family. I
Yes.
think everybody will agree with that. That's not a great shock, especially to people who are out there working, trying to make ends meet. So it's very important. Well, now the Louisville Council on November 6, 2014, I guess it was, had a very lopsided vote, 20 to 3 to 3, to approve this. How did that come about? Had you had a chance to address the council, or were they all briefed on it, or what exactly transpired there?
Well, we had members of our local coalition testify before the Metro Council on a couple of occasions before some committees of the council. And then on the night of the vote, we had some representatives of our coalition speak to the full council. So it was a process. It was a rather quick unfolding, but we did prepare before the night of the vote in terms of testifying and a lot of conversations and preparation within our own coalition.
It was
Please.
somewhat contentious, and they did have one council person that left, and I believe he came back. But with anything like this, you're not going to have everybody agree 100%. And some people may have, again, false information or not understand what is actually before them. So it's our duty to help educate those people too, to help bring this up so that it's better understood.
And of course, this resolution that passed the council was then signed by Mayor Greg Fischer, who's the mayor of the city of Louisville. And I believe you two ladies we'll have a photo will be coming up. You were in attendance. That must have been a very gratifying moment for you when the mayor signed off on this, was it not?
It was. It was great that the sponsor there for Metro Council that carried the resolution was able to get it passed and by Metro Council, and then ask our Mayor Greg Fischer to do the ceremonial signing with us, and it was awesome. And it's been on the internet and out everywhere, so that we are very proud and happy that we are a compassionate city. I believe Greg Fischer dubbed us a compassionate city, and I think CEDAW is about being compassionate.
And Reverend Barnett, you've got a very interesting website, citiesforcedaw.org, and we're going to flash that up and it'll show your logo. But our viewers can go and sign up to receive your newsletter. Is that correct?
Yes, they can. The citiesforcedaw.org is the national website. We also have a Louisville Coalition for CEDAW website. So yes, they can come to our local website and contact us, become a member. They can endorse our coalition. They can become active, and there are many ways you can become involved.
Exactly. So we would encourage people to go to that website and get a lot more information in the future. This really highlights what cities can do. I remember back in 1997, I believe it was, when the Kyoto Protocol was adopted, and the idea was to reduce the carbon footprint. We know through scientific studies that primarily through fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas, that we're creating this intensely carbon-laden atmosphere here. It's creating global warming, climate change, glaciers are melting, that type of thing. The United States did not adopt the Kyoto Protocol, yet over 1,000 cities in the United States said, well, we see climate change happening, and cities create about 85%, or maybe about 80% of the global warming, and so they move forward on their own. But this is really a unique example of when the national government doesn't act, be it the Senate or whatever, cities can take a lead in this, can they not?
Right. This is supposed to be a groundswell to get more and more cities involved to pass these resolutions or proclamations, do the ordinances, and to bring it up to the forefront so that political people are looking at it, as well as engaging other people in the community and other organizations.
Exactly. And we've talked about the city of Louisville. Do you have an idea, and this may change by the time we air the program, roughly how many cities in the United States have adopted this? I know San Francisco has, but there are many other cities looking at doing the same thing. Is that correct?
Go ahead.
Probably 30 or more have been working on it. San Francisco is the only city that has adopted an ordinance or passed an ordinance. So there are a lot of cities somewhere along the process.
There's about, I've read 40 municipalities have passed it, as well as 15 states, and that was important. For me, when I first looked at this, and I thought, well, Louisville, okay, we're a big city, but we're just one city, and there are many cities in Kentucky, and that maybe we needed a state law. So we have a sponsor for a bill in the General Assembly, in the 2015 General Assembly, for legislation on CEDAW. So hopefully that will be a consciousness raising and get out in the Commonwealth of Kentucky so many more people will know about it. So it is on the rise. It is a movement. It's amazing how fast this happened, from the formation of the Louisville Coalition for CEDAW to get the resolution, to get the mayor signing it, and now to be working on an ordinance and also have a state bill.
Exactly. And of course that points out the importance of getting state legislatures. We have 50 in the United States, but there are thousands of cities, tens of thousands of cities around the United States that could do the same thing. Do you have an idea of how many cities overseas? I know this is really tricky, but a rough idea of how many are looking at it now or who are involved. Have you seen any figures on that?
I don't know on that.
It would be hard to pin them down because there's
right.
Tens of thousands of cities. So.
Right. I'm not familiar with that.
Exactly right. Before we run out of time, I want to mention a couple things. You were talking about employment opportunities. You were talking about educational opportunities, human rights, civil rights for women.
Yes.
Another item that comes up is child care. So often we hear about that. How do you factor child care into this whole discussion, and how important is it to look at this as a right for not only women, but for a family, perhaps?
Right. Well, I've seen, over the years, I've seen men become more caretakers for children, but in the past, the woman usually was the main caretaker. But now I think maybe men, because they're in office mostly, would be more receptive and understand more, and also I think they have more bonding with children and want to be around them. So I think it's possible to get much more legislation to help with those efforts for child care and for early child education. It's going to take more of that to have a better educated
Exactly.
people to help all over the world.
Exactly. Well, let me, in our last minute or so we have left, the hardest question: what is the next step, Reverend Barnett? What would you like to see the city of Louisville do, or other cities too, for that matter?
Well, the next step, I think, is two-part for Louisville. We need to write at the ordinance and work toward getting it passed. The second piece is to build the coalition. We are holding events, educational events, on various issues regarding women's human rights, trying to pull people together, and it's actually happening. The movement in Louisville is remarkable. We have a lot of young people, females and males, who want to get on board. It's a really good sign. So responding to those initiatives, getting people to work on these issues is going to be key.
And if I might just throw in
Sure.
about the National United Nations Association of the United States of America has really taken the lead on this too, and they have many chapters throughout the United States, and they are developing a toolkit that will be available on their website, www.unausa.org, and that will be available and will help other cities be able to not have to go through what we went through to get things, but they're also kind of using us as a pilot on that and letting us have input.
Exactly. That's very important. And of course, as we mentioned, our viewers can go to citiesforcedaw.org, get more information, sign up for your newsletters. Go to www.unausa.org. They can also check our www.globalconnectionstelevision.com because we have talked about CEDAW and women's rights in the past, and we will certainly do that in the future. But Reverend Barnett, Teena Halbig, I want to thank you so very much for a very interesting and a very informative program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Bill Miller. Thank you for joining us on today's Global Connections program.